You have questions and we're going to get to them. One of the questions that I got was, what do I say to people when they say, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, this is embarrassing. I don't know what to say. So over in this unschooling guide of critics and naysayers, I have a page in there that has links, but it also has some ideas. And I wanted to share some of them with you, that you can say things like, this is working for us now. If it stops working, we'll do something else. And the reason that one works is then people don't feel like you've drank some Kool-Aid where you are not going to see that this is not the best thing. No, you're constantly aware of it. That's the idea. You could even say, we thought about that, or I think about that all the time, or everybody wants the best for their children and we want that too. And we all know what's good for one child may not be good for another. And I've read a lot about this. I have an article or two you could read if you're open to that, because sometimes they are. Sometimes the questions are just trying to get you back in line. Other times they're not happy and they don't know what to do. And they may need you to help them figure it out. That does not mean you have to run around being the poster child for unschooling. You don't. You can even say, we homeschool in kind of a relaxed way. You don't have to say the word unschooling. The word unschooling in a lot of communities really raises eyebrows and really makes it more difficult for you. And especially if you're new, just don't say it. Don't offer too much information. I think that's one of the things that we tend to do. We tend to over explain, right? So you can screenshot this and you can get these others, but I think I have most of them. I'll think about it. I appreciate your opinion. If it's your parent asking, you can say, you raised me to make good decisions. You're going to have to trust that I'm doing that now. If it's wrong, we'll see that and we'll make changes. And if they press on, you can say, I know you care, but you don't get a vote. We've heard everyone's issues and we've made our decision, and we'll change if it stops working. Okay, I'm just looking at that list to see. You could, like, if you're at a family gathering, you can say, I'm done with being in the hot seat today. I think it's somebody else's turn. Where you're a little more lighthearted about it, that tends to help. So those are for the person that was asking, what do I say? Hopefully that will give a little bit of information. Another question was, they said their spouse was concerned about how they're going to know they're covering everything. And the simple answer is you're not. This is part of unschooling, is this trust that kids are learning what they need, that you're creating this individualized approach to learning that's going to work. The good news is it's not over at 18. They can continue on. They can suddenly decide, oh my gosh, I really want to know this. And suddenly they know it. Something happens. Say you have the Olympics or you have something else that wasn't a typical thing. And suddenly now they're interested in it, or they're moving in that direction. And so when you have this question about covering everything, it's important to focus on deschooling, because deschooling helps you see that they're going to have strengths that are bigger than other people's strengths. And they're going to also have weaknesses. And if those weaknesses are really problematic, then they will learn what they need. Will they think of that at age 9? No. Will they a little later in their later teen years? Probably, because they'll say, I really want to go be such and such, so I'm going to need to take this community college class. And then they do that. So you're going to tap into real world experiences. You're going to think seasonally instead of schoolishly, because seasonally is going to give you opportunities. It's going to give you things in the community, again, to lead that full, rich life. So I would recommend that you put yourself on a subject scavenger hunt. You think, this week, I want us, we were talking about this in our coaching call this week. You could get a big whiteboard and say, I'm going to write down all the ways I see math in our life. And I want you to write it down too for the kids. They don't have to. If they are looking at you like, you're out of your mind, Mom, then just do it yourself. And you could say things like, I'm looking for shapes in the living room. and you look, oh, the window is a rectangle, or the ring light is a circle. I'm looking at my desk, or the pencils are cylinders, and you could write those things on the whiteboard. Or you could say how long we've got a clock, or we've got a budget, or we've got a credit card, or we've got a vet bill, or we've got all kinds of things where we're seeing math. And then you do another week and you have the whiteboard and you wipe it off and you're like, where do we see history? There's a reenactment happening, or there's a historical show that we're going to watch. Or when I play my video game, it's at a time period where there were fiefs and different things that are historic. And or maybe there's a costuming thing. And not only will you see where these things are weaving through life, you will see what's of interest to your kids. So the subject scavenger hunt is a pretty fun thing to do. Another question people asked, there were a few of them that wanted to know about inexpensive or free ways to motivate or help them find the spark. And I think that scavenger hunt is probably your best bet, because then you tap into what's already happening around you. So you're going to explore their interests. Somebody was asking, do we have incentives or no incentives? And the answer is no incentives. Because the thing about incentives is then they do it for the incentive and not because they loved learning. And so if you're thinking, but they'll never love that, then maybe they don't need it. And I know that a lot of people throw up their hands and say, that's it, I'm out of here. Because really it's maybe they don't need it right now. Or maybe you can look at, if you don't use it in your daily life, then did they really need it? The quadratic equation, did I really need to spend a year on that? I've never used it. The highest level of math that I use is ratio and proportions, and maybe interpreting statistics, which isn't going to be something you do as a younger kid, but you might be doing statistics of different sports. You might have done basic statistics with the Olympics and the medal count and who's running what speed, different things like that. So you're going to negotiate and collaborate with your kids instead of giving them incentives to do something they don't want to do. Instead, you're going to help them see that they have it in them to learn and grow, and that you're going to help them. And as they get older, they understand that better. Maturity is a real thing, and their brains develop, and you can collaborate with them a little bit better as they get older. When they're younger, not so much. When they're younger, sometimes, and that's a big sweeping statement, some kids are much better at this, but you might be able to brainstorm with them, play with them. Again, when you work on the trust and the connection, then you hear more from them and they listen more to you. When you are able to show them that their ideas, no matter how childish, because they're a child, you're going to listen to them. You're going to value them. You're going to help them explore and figure it out. And then again, it helps to find other unschoolers to talk with so that you can brainstorm with other parents or with me. And so I think, so looking, oh, this was what I missed. Looking at what's happening in the community this week or this month, only do a little at a time, because sometimes when we get busy planning way far out, we're using it as a way to procrastinate. So don't do that. You may say, okay, I don't want to forget that there's an apple picking thing in September. Okay, write that over to the side of I have a big dry erase calendar. And there's a section for notes on the left. You might write September apples, don't forget. But in the meantime, only focus on this month and really only detailed for this week. Because if it's 107 degrees like it is here where I am, I'm not doing outside stuff, but I might not have known it was going to be that weeks ago, but I know it this week. And so thinking about what could we do that would really work. All right. So another question came about, what about structure? How do we have a little bit of structure, or do unschoolers have no structure? Schoolers have structure. It's just not arbitrary, and it's not system-based, or where the system is more important than the individual. I have a webinar that we did earlier in this year all about the typical day. And In that webinar, I made a PDF that I want you guys to have. You can look at how to structure your day from here forward, where you're going to gather some ideas, think about the daily structure, make a weekly plan. So I think this was really helpful, and I want you guys to have that. All right. And then the question about unschooling teens. Do I have anything for that? I've got a lot for that. So yes, they get into college. Yes, we can make a transcript. All of this is in the membership group, or you can get it individually. You could get the mini bundle of a few things: life skills, unschooling your teens, and the Everything Counts book. Or you could get the Unschooling Teens Toolkit, and that includes the Homeschool Teens book, life skills, the workbook from the transcript course. It has a lot. Everything Counts, 75 ways to connect with your kids. Or if you just want the book, where you can say, I just want to hear about how other teens manage this. So that is another option. I think. Oh, we always have to end on this one. The technology and screen time question. How do I keep the kids safe? What do I do about them managing their time? But the technology guide is so good. It will help you see where you might be saying things or operating from more of a fear, and that prevents you from connecting with their kids on something that they really like. If you're going to try to get their cooperation and collaboration on something, you have to have more trust for them. You have to communicate with them in a way that doesn't belittle their choices. There is a lot in this guide. It's one of the better guides, actually, that will help you see all the ways that technology isn't the boogeyman. It's just something that we need to help them learn how to navigate. And we may not navigate it very well ourselves. So we need to learn it. And that's one of the things about unschooling, is that we do discover that we learn right alongside them. That's why it helps to join the membership group, even just for a little bit. The guide's included in there, and a whole bunch of resources about technology. But I also have podcasts and blog posts about technology and how to manage screen time, if that was something that you're like, I just want to just dive into all the resources first. So you can always do that. Let's see if anybody has some questions. I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the chat if that was good for you. Ashley said, I had a homeschool mom test her son who is in 8th grade, and he is on a 5th or 6th grade level. So she's going to put him back in public school. I'm so nervous for my kid to be behind, but that's behind on a public school level, not on a life level. Does that make sense? Oh my gosh, it totally makes sense, Ashley. And anytime that you have a standardized test, if you don't have a standardized life, you may not get it. It's all right. There's not a finish line at 8th grade of, oh my gosh, I have to have that. Now, that person that did it, that's fine. They can do whatever they need to do. And I don't begrudge them of that. And if that is what they think of as the answer, then fine. But if you're nervous that they're going to be behind, the answer is, behind what? Behind in their strengths, behind in their interests, behind in the things that they really want. We don't all need to be generalists. Some of us are going to do all kinds of things that we don't have to. Maybe we're very mathy. We don't have to have such an enormous literature base of knowledge because that was what our mom liked, or because that's what everybody did in 8th grade or 10th grade or whatever. It's all right to just watch Last of the Mohicans instead of read it. It's all right. Have you read that book? Oh my gosh. And it's all right to be behind in some things and not in others. And so it's really important for us to stop the comparisons, to realize that when you say, I want to individualize something, then you mean it. And that means they're going to have strengths and weaknesses that don't match somebody else. And that's okay, because you don't have a standardized kid, because you're not living a standardized life. And we're conditioned to think that's what has to happen. It's just what did happen. It's not what has to happen. It's not even best, but it is familiar. And when it's familiar, we tend to gravitate towards it. It's where we go if we get fearful. And that's why it's really important for us to work on our own fears. Hopefully that helped a little bit. Maggie says, I'd love to normalize the not back to school celebration with other tweens, but I don't know where to find them. A lot of homeschool communities have Facebook groups, but you could also start your own. You could also say homeschooling / unschooling in Cleveland or wherever you live. And then you could start writing on there. I'm looking for other teens. I'm looking for other kids in this age range. We're all going to go to the movies. Do you want to go? Where you just start to build a community. I think that what happened after we had the pandemic, we were so used to somebody else having a community for us. Or maybe we left the school system with COVID and then we never went back. And if that's the case, a lot of the structures that were in place where homeschooled communities were strong and doing stuff, their kids aged out. And when your kids aged out and you're like, I don't think I'm going to start that back up again. And then it didn't continue. And so then there was no like baton passing from the old homeschoolers to the new homeschoolers. So now it's up to you guys to start something, to make something. Are your kids really interested in, I don't know, Star Wars? Then have a Star Wars movie marathon party at your house and start to get to know other kids that are in that same age range. Because remember, it's going to be much better, especially as the kids get older, to get them together based upon interests instead of age. Because age worked when they were playing at the playground. But once they get older, kids that want to do photography, kids that want to play Minecraft, kids that want to play theater kids, whatever kids that are into sports, you're going to have to get them together based upon interests. And one of the things that I found was that a lot of the time we had a mix. We had a mix of school kids and not schooled kids. We had a mix of homeschooled kids and unschooled kids because the kids didn't care what the background was. They just wanted to get together with other kids that had that similar interest. So that's a possibility for how to get to know others. But I think Facebook is probably your best bet. In the old days, we put up a flyer at the grocery store. I don't think anybody does that anymore. Not if you're doing car pickup, your groceries. Okay, let's see. Faith Nicole says, honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm new to all of this, so I need ideas on a budget and I need community for her. Yes. Let me pull up real fast. Unschooling on a limited budget. Ta-da! Here we go. That's something that might be helpful. There's a podcast that goes with it. There's also a free PDF that is 40 ideas for learning on a limited budget. So that's good. And I think that I agree that we have to help our kids find community, but we also have to assess whether we're thinking they need 30 friends. They don't. They need one or two. And maybe it'll be online depending on where you live. And that's okay. And we tend to like think if it's not a duplicated classroom experience, it's somehow not valuable. When some kids want tons of friends, others want one. And so again, with the individualizing, we have to figure out, what do people really want? Are there Minecraft groups? Do you have online community for teens like Minecraft groups? There are a couple. And I would, if you look up Lainey Liberty, Laine, Liberty, Liberti, and she has online Zoom things with kids around the world because she does a world schooling thing where she takes families on trips around where they have all kinds of opportunities. And she has something called Transformative Teens where she has groups that are with teenagers. So that's a possibility. Roya Dado has an online group of teens who do art together, and she's a therapist. So she does a little guided conversations with them to keep everything. It's really good. And so if you're on Instagram with me, you'll see me sometimes share her stuff. But if we're on Instagram or Facebook, you can send me a message and say, tell me who that teen person was you were talking about, and I'll get it for you. Let's see. Can you do non-testing assessments instead? I think that's going to be the route for our testing, state testing requirements. I can't do testing for you. And Heather said, have you heard of Bridge Academy? I think Leah does testing. I'm not sure, but I think what you're asking is non-testing assessments. And what sometimes, depending on where you live, like I know for sure that in North Carolina, you can do an open book testing because you don't turn it in anywhere. You just have to test in a certain grade level. So do it, as this is just our little guide of how it says how to do division, do these division things, and you've never done division. Let me show you. Okay, let's do it together. Now we've done it. Great. And then that way it's a very casual approach and you're using it as an exposure thing. So about half of the states, 50 states, about half of them, 26-ish, have something to do with testing. And so some states are a little trickier, only a couple of them though. Most of them you do the test and they don't care. And some of those that do the test, you don't turn them in anywhere. So I would not get all bent out of shape over it. The question was, I'm on your page with the standardized test, but what if your state requires annual testing? How do we navigate this and how our kids react to it? I think that if you have annual testing required, then, but it's going to depend on, do they have to go to a testing site? Does it have to be done by an evaluator? Or can you administer the tests? Could you find someone who's unschooling friendly about the tests? I do have people in my group that do something called Woodcock Johnson, and that's more of an achievement test and it's conversational. And so the people that come in and do the test that they've had just chat with the kids, and then next thing you know, they're done. So there's a lot of options out there that people don't realize. Everybody doesn't have to just go sit at a testing site. And then also, if the kids are upset about the testing, tell them not to worry about it, that it's not, if you don't do well, mom's going to jail and you're going to school. That's not going to happen. But kids can get stories in their heads, and we can have fears that kind of fuel those stories. So we have to be careful of that. Heather, hi Heather, says, I'm on board with unschooling, but hard to get husband to have lots of confidence with it. Also, my dad often asks about my kids' homeschooling from a school-minded perspective. Yeah, I think that with spouses, if you go to my website, there's a ton of stuff about when dad's not on board. And I think that sometimes what happens is we haven't been super confident. And so then that just makes them kind of spiral. And so if we can approach it more confidently, if we can share examples of, oh my gosh, you should see them building this thing, or oh my gosh, they know these things, and demonstrate the strengths that the kids have, that sometimes helps. It also helps to realize that it takes time, that you're sitting here coming to webinars or learning more about unschooling, and they're not. And my husband never wanted to read anything that that was about unschooling. And I'd sometimes follow him around and read some snippet, and he's like, all right. And you just get to the good. Think about this, John Taylor Gatto kind of stuff that talks about what's wrong with the school approach, or thinking about his own school experience. And sometimes that's what has to happen, is that you have to have a sit down with them about, what are you afraid of? Different spouses have different fears. Sometimes their fears, I'm afraid they're not going to be able to provide for their family. I'm afraid they're going to get ridiculed. I'm afraid they don't know anything about something. And then let's just focus on that a little bit. And the thing about getting ridiculed is they're probably going to get ridiculed anyway. Everybody has that experience. So better to have it not on a daily basis, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. Better to just bump into it and then have family there as your scaffolding that can help you figure out All right, these are your strengths. These are your weaknesses. Do you care about shoring up your weaknesses, or are you currently okay with it? And they might be currently okay with it. Kids that don't have great social skills, then talk with them more. Make sure your social skills are good, because often the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so if you need to help them figure out, no, it's important to make eye contact with somebody when you're talking to them. Now you say that to a 7-year-old and they may not want to, and that's okay. That doesn't mean they'll be the same way at 14. It just means that at 7, that was too much. But as they get older, there are different social etiquette kinds of things that do get them through stuff. And you can show them and you can explain it to them. As far as your spouse goes, find out what he's really afraid of. What's the specific thing? And then go from there. How can you appease that? And maybe it's going to be they don't know their times tables. Do they really need to? Really? Because, for instance, I don't know that my kids all know their times tables, and they're fully functioning adults in society. They own businesses and they have budgets and they do all the things they need to do. And they may not know their sevens, but they know their threes, because when they were in Girl Scouts and they sold Girl Scout cookies, they were $3 a box, and those girls could sell some cookies. So they knew 3, 6. Yeah, that was pretty funny. But all right, so kids fight over who chooses what to watch on main TV by the comfy couch. I think that's reality, right? And you could say you get this day of the week, you get this day of the week, you get this day of the week, or you just have to create a structure that's going to work. Whether it's come to breakfast and we'll do a drawing of who gets to choose and see what happens. It was the same, who gets the good seats in the car, who gets to decide where we're going to eat for dinner if we're going out. You just have to work with them and help them figure it out, instead of just throw up your hands and say, I'm so tired of everybody fighting. I'll tell you the truth. I said that plenty of times and they lived. They were resilient. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to say things in not the right way, and you apologize and you go back and you try again tomorrow, and remember that you're doing this 24/7. You're going to mess up. You're going to get a little tired. You're going to get a little hungry. You're going to get a little worried. So that's why it's really important to focus on, have you eaten? Have you had some water? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting your needs met so that you can meet theirs? And that's one of those things. Nobody taught us how to do real self-care. A bubble bath is probably not going to solve it. It might be really great, but it may not help you if your question is, I feel so unappreciated. Going to take a bubble bath isn't going to help you. If you feel unappreciated, you need to talk to the people around you, and you need to appreciate yourself. You need to figure out, this is an inside job, and I'm going to have to make sure that I'm making the choices that I like, that are best for my family, and I will keep plowing forward. I don't know what made me tell you that, but okay. Let's see. Maggie says, now that we're entering tween years, my kids are more resistant to going to activities with randos. Oh yeah, absolutely. They've got lots of schooled friends in our neighborhood, but we don't yet have a strong homeschooling community. My kids tell me, we have enough friends. Stop trying to make us play with other homeschoolers. But then hours later, who's available to play? Yeah, I think the thing is to remind them when they say who's available to play is that we may need to cast a wider net. We may need to figure out, what do we want to do with how are we going to connect with other people? The thing to remind them too is, think of it on like a continuum, a 1 to 10 continuum. You've got a best friend that's in 9 or 10. You've got the people that make your skin crawl. There are 1 or 2. But there are a lot of 6s in there. People that you're like, I get along with them when we go out for ice cream. I get along with them when we play soccer. I get along with them for something. They are not going to be who I have for a sleepover. And so understanding that somebody may be a different percentage of a friend. Maybe or maybe your percentage is better. Maybe to say they're not going to be 100%, but maybe they're 50-50. Maybe they're sometimes good, sometimes not. And so you may have a feeling about, I don't like those homeschooled kids, but what if they wanted to do something you wanted to do? Would you be able to tolerate it? And then it helps them see that we can expand our circle a little bit. Especially remind them that you're asking me who's available. So these are the people that are available. Shall we figure out a way that we can find some common ground with them? And maturity, their frontal lobe isn't all developed. They are not necessarily going to be seeing it the way you see it, because they've also got other stuff. Maybe they have stories in their head of what homeschool kids are like, or they've honed in on something. They don't like how they dressed, or they didn't like their music choice, or they didn't like something else. And then that became a big deal. You've got to see past that. If you're not going to find absolutely everybody, and I'm only going to collect my simpatico people, you're going to have to find a way to find some common ground with other people. It's a skill to learn, and it takes a while. And you just keep talking about it. Okay. Dawn said, we're a one vehicle family and we're not able to just pick up and go places and do out of the home experiences except on weekends. I feel I won't be able to do unschooling justice for my child because of this. I'm wondering your thoughts. Again, one of the things that happened in the pandemic, the silver lining was that we really learned how to be home. Especially introverts. They were like celebrating that finally they're not being forced out of the house all the time. And think about, how can I make my home something really great for them? How can we have different areas in the house that are conducive to the things that they really enjoy? Instead of thinking, oh, it's so much better out there. I wish we were this, or I wish we were that. We are this. What can we do? And we had a period of time we were a one-car family, and I drove my husband to work. And we put the kids in the car in their PJs, and 6:15 in the morning, we chucked it. And that way we had the car for that day because we were going to go to something. And so you have to just be a little bit more intentional and figure out, okay, could we make that happen? And so maybe that is an answer for you. So bumping up how to make your home really good and conducive to your kids, not really good. It doesn't have to be a home beautiful kind of thing. But what are things they like? What would be fun? What's good music? Think of your senses. What's good music? What's good food? What looks good? What feels good? What sounds good? All the different ways to make this a nurturing sanctuary for your kids, so that this nest is great for them. And then on the weekends, you go places. Okay, suggestions on how to get the interest of a resistant learner. My initial thought is, resisting what? Kids don't resist their interests. Or resisting, you're offering something they don't want, right? And so maybe don't offer it. Maybe start with where they are and ripple out, then stand on the side of the river and say, come on over here, this is where it's really good. It is not necessarily really good from their perspective. Now, that way you're only using your have tos for when you really have to. Now, you have to go to the doctor appointment. You have to go with me to the grocery store because there's nobody else at home. So you have your have tos, and then it's not, you have to listen to me read you this book about history. No, they don't have to. And don't use your have tos on that. Okay. Any resources on helping kids explain how they're schooled to others? Yeah, I have some private podcasts over in the membership. I know I keep telling everyone to come to the membership group, but that is where I have some that help the kids figure out what is this about? I'll make a note, because if I have something out there, I want you to have it. Otherwise, come join us. Last question. My family is always like, how is she going to get into college without a diploma or a transcript? How is she going to have socialization? Then they come with I don't think unschooling is wise, etc. Okay. How is she going to get into college? She's going to get into college like everybody else. She's going to take an assessment test and do well or don't do well, and then be placed in the classes that fit. So if she doesn't do well, she will take what I always refer to as developmental classes, but really they're just like college class 0034. And it's a pass or fail class. And once you've taken it, then you can take college algebra. Or they might do fine on it. There's usually pre-tests at the website of practice tests for those assessments that they could take. Or they can just settle into the idea of I'm going to have a few semesters of developmental classes. And that's my transition from a play-based life to academic world. And that works. And a lot of kids do that, mine included. And so like at 17 or 18, how are they going to have socialization? Because we're out in the world talking to people, because we talk within our family, because we watch TV and talk about how people talk to each other. And I would never say it like that to somebody. And look how that caused problems. And all of a sudden, social skills happen because we are having communication with them. And they are not locked in a closet. And maybe that's your answer to your family. I'm not locking them in a closet. We're going to be out in the world. We are going to talk to probably more people than a school kid is going to talk to, because we're experiencing life. And I think that sometimes when you're new, you are used to taking advice from family members. And some of us, depending on how old we are as parents, we haven't really all the way stepped into our role of I'm in charge. We're still in daughter mode where we take advice from everybody and we don't, they want to remind us of all of our flaws and all of our shortcomings, and we're still listening to that. And at a certain point, we have to say, back up, I got this. I appreciate it. I appreciate your help. I'm doing my own thing. And then we have to recognize that when they continue to push like that, they're not respecting you. And you need to stand up for yourself. And that doesn't mean that you have to say, I'm doing it. And you don't have to be aggressive. You just have to just nod and walk away. They don't just say, you know what, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm working on it. And, or you can tell them you don't have a vote. I'm the mom. Trust that you raised me so that I can make the decisions that need to happen, because the world is not the same world as when we were kids. And when I was kids looking around at y'all, that was generations before. It was very different. And so that's sometimes something to say is the world is not the same as it was. And I am trying to make sure my kids have all the opportunities that really fit them, that we don't have to do one size fits all. We can simply figure out what works best and pivot again. So I think we got all the questions. Do me a favor. You may have done it in the chat before, but for those of you that are still here, tell me where we've connected before. Are we an Instagram together? Or do you follow on YouTube? Are you a podcast listener? Are you a Facebook group? What are you? Because now I can look at your name and I can see it. Faith says, I'm Faith Nicole. Sorry to shorten that. I'm the black sheep and I'm titled rebellious. They don't like my answers or my comeback responses. All I tell them is their opinion wasn't sought or needed. That's sometimes the way. And it's almost like you have to remember that they are trying to relearn their new role in your life. Their new role is backseat. Don't be a backseat driver. And that's okay. All right, let's see. Facebook, Instagram, email list. Good. Oh, be sure you get on the email list. That way, if I have something new coming out, you're sure to know about it. So helpful. Your calm demeanor and your responses to imagined family members is making me feel calm. Oh, good. I'm glad. Podcast and Instagram, podcast and email, podcast and YouTube. Oh, y'all, we are connected in all the places. Excellent. I love it. All right. Reach out if you need anything. I'm over here making all kinds of PDFs. Did you hear here I am about the membership group, but There's 500 PDFs over there because they'll say something on a coaching call and they're like, I'll make a PDF for that. It's just how I roll. So there are a lot. There are some free ones over in the shop. You can go grab all of those. And sometimes they are connected on a blog post. So if you have a question, a particular issue that's bothering you, go look at the blog post because there might be some extra stuff trickled in there. All right. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. You've completely changed my parenting and my kids have a better life because of it. Oh, I really appreciate hearing that because that's the whole point. Is to try to help people see that they don't have to have a life that looks like everybody else's. They just have to have the life that fits them. And I just want you to know it'll be okay. So much love to everyone. And I will see you in all the places. Take care. Thanks for coming. And bye-bye.